A look at the day's headlines. Typhoon Tapah is moving out to sea after bringing deaths, injuries and infrastructure damage to large swathes of southern South Korea. The worst appears to be over, but the authorities are still advising people in the affected areas to be vigilant. President Moon Jae-in arrives in New York ahead of summit talks with US President Donald Trump and the head of the United Nations. He'll give a speech at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday, local time. Plus, in a new report, the World Meteorological Organization says climate change is accelerating, with carbon dioxide levels increasing, sea levels rising, and ice sheets melting faster than ever before. We begin today with the carnage Typhoon Tapah left in its wake over the weekend. The storm, which battered South Korea's southern regions on Sunday, is now moving out into the East Sea. While it may be losing its initial punch since making landfall, local authorities are still advising people in the south of the country to stay alert until the storm has completely disappeared out to sea. Moon Gon-young starts us off.
Typhoon Tapah, which slammed into South Korea's southern regions late Sunday, has now changed course, moving toward the East Sea between Korea and Japan. A typhoon alert was lifted late Sunday, but strong wind advisories are expected to be in effect around the southern island of Jeju until Monday morning. With over 700 millimeters of rain and winds approaching 150 kilometers an hour battering some parts of Jeju, the typhoon caused multiple deaths, and although the exact number is still unknown, it's being reported that several people have lost their lives. A 72-year-old woman was found dead under the debris of a collapsed house in Busan due to strong winds, and more deaths were reported in other regions. Multiple people were also injured across the region. Over the weekend, nearly 15,000 households nationwide experienced power outages, including more than 3,000 homes on Jeju. Heavy downpours and gusts left dozens of houses inundated with floodwater, and crops were leveled by powerful winds. In the southern Daegu and Gyeongsang-buk-do region, deaths and injuries were reported, including in car accidents due to the inclement weather. South Korea's Disaster Safety Countermeasures Headquarters is warning residents in those regions to pay extra caution until Monday morning. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News.
Now, President Moon Jae-in has touched down in New York for a 5-day visit. On his agenda, his 9th summit with US President Donald Trump and an address to the 74th UN General Assembly. The hope is that a successful few days in the Big Apple will grease the gears for a smooth restart of stalled denuclearization negotiations between North Korea and the United States. Our Shin Se-min files this report from New York.
Two moments stand out as the highlights of President Moon Jae-in's marathon 5-day trip to New York. First, his one-on-one with his American counterpart Donald Trump on Monday local time, which will largely focus on North Korea-related matters. Second is his speech to other world leaders at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday. It'll be another occasion for the South Korean leader to show the world what Seoul has been doing to try and denuclearize the peninsula and forge a lasting peace.
The spirit of the UN, which aims for world peace through multilateral talks, is most needed on the Korean peninsula.
The 9th summit between Presidents Moon and Trump will be their first since President Trump came to Seoul in late June. With their meeting scheduled on what appears to be the cusp of North Korea and the U.S. resuming working-level nuclear talks, the issue is likely to be at the heart of their discussions. They both want to ensure the working-level talks go smoothly so the process can gather some much-needed momentum after months of stagnation. Prior to his arrival in New York, President Moon expressed his determination to do all he can to foster peace and prosperity in the region.
트럼프 대통령과 정상회담을 통해 북미 대화를 적극 지지하고 지원할 것입니다.
Also on the president's agenda, upgrading the already strong bilateral relations between Seoul and Washington. A more touchy subject is negotiating next year's cost-sharing agreement for U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. The trade row between South Korea and Japan could also come up, considering the U.S. government's well-publicized disappointment that Seoul terminated an intel sharing pact with Japan as part of its response to Tokyo's trade curbs. The uptick in tensions has put the U.S. in a tough spot, as South Korea and Japan are key U.S. allies in the region and the linchpins of the ongoing denuclearization efforts. Also on the schedule on his first day in New York, President Moon will have meetings with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, as well as his Polish and Danish counterparts on strengthening two-way ties. The president's biggest overseas mission this time is picking up his mediator role in the stalled denuclearization talks between North Korea and the U.S. He sees himself as the best positioned to solidly lay the foundation for lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, New York.
Now, as a follow-up to Se-min's report, South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa has stressed that the most important task facing negotiations on denuclearization is drawing up a roadmap as soon as working-level talks restart between North Korea and the US. The minister, who is accompanying President Moon on his trip to New York, said the Trump administration is open to talks on security assurances and sanctions relief for the regime. She added the US has a basic position to talk with Pyongyang with an open attitude. She also stressed it's crucial that concrete steps towards denuclearization actually start this time, as the process has been stalled since February, when the second North Korea-US summit ended in Hanoi with no deal. Now, Japan has reportedly failed to detect the exact path taken by North Korea's short-range ballistic missile launches more than 2 times since May. Citing several anonymous sources, Tokyo-based Kyodo news agency said Japan's Aegis-equipped destroyer in the East Sea or its Air Self-Defense Force radar systems failed to detect the exact course of missiles fired by the regime in May and September. Kyodo News said it was more difficult to formulate accurate readings as the missiles were flying at lower altitudes and with more complicated flight paths. It added the missiles are easier to monitor from South Korea due to the missiles being fired from a closer proximity, nodding to the negative impact of Seoul's recent termination of its military intel sharing pact with Tokyo. Kyodo also stressed the importance of Japan strengthening its cooperation with South Korea and the US. Now, climate change has shot back into the global consciousness as of late, with millions of young protesters taking to the streets around the world to make their voices heard. But if that didn't get your attention, this next story might do. New data from the World Meteorological Administration shows the 5-year period from 2014 to 2019 saw the warmest global temperatures ever recorded. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Published on the eve of key talks in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, the World Meteorological Organization has published its latest data on climate change. Shocked by what it contains, weather experts have expressed serious concerns about the latest assessment. According to WMO's data, the 5-year period from 2014 to 2019 was not only the warmest on record, but it also led to a significant rise in sea levels. While the average rate of sea level rise was 3.2 millimeters a year from 1993 to 2019, the average from 2014 to 2019 had shot up to 5 millimeters. The 10-year period from 2007 to 2016 saw an average of roughly 4 millimeters a year. The report also indicates global warming affects the world's oceans the most, with more than 90% of the excess heat caused by climate change soaked up by the ocean. Analysis showed 2018 had the highest ocean heat content values on record. Experts attributed the changes to carbon dioxide emissions hitting new highs over the same period. Data shows carbon emissions were up 20% compared with the previous 5 years. The release of the data coincides with the special UN summit on climate change, which takes place in New York on Monday local time. A number of political leaders will attend the one-day event, which according to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is designed to be about action, not empty pledges. Greta Thunberg and other youth activists who have been marching on the streets of New York will be there to call for action. In addition, about 60 heads of states are also expected to join, with countries expected to announce new plans to slash emissions and set up new multi-nation environmental protection initiatives. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, as you just heard there, the United Nations is going to be holding that landmark climate change meeting on Monday local time. Heads of state are going to share how their countries have been cutting carbon dioxide emissions and shifting as much as they can anyway towards a more green economy. However, reports show there's been little progress on those fronts, with experts saying millions of people around the world remain at risk of suffering from a humanitarian crisis. Oh Si-young with the details.
Without decisive action to tackle climate change, hundreds of millions of people could face a humanitarian crisis by the year 2050. That's according to a new report released by the Int'l Red Cross ahead of the United Nations Climate Action Summit on Monday.
By 2050, 200 million people every year could need international humanitarian aid as a result of a cruel combination of climate-related disaster and the socio-economic impact of the climate change. This is nearly twice the estimated 180 million people who need help today from the international humanitarian system because of floods, storms, droughts, and wildfires.
The report says that the cost of doing nothing comes at a price tag of some $20 billion per year by 2030. However, if governments take prompt action to prioritise climate-conscious social and economic development, the number of people in need of humanitarian aid could drop by roughly 40% compared to today, and by 90% in 2050. But this requires stronger global commitment to reduce carbon emissions and promote green growth. Many experts say current national pledges are unlikely to keep global temperatures under 2 degrees Celsius hotter than the pre-industrial age, as set out in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Monday's summit is expected to serve as a test of resolve on climate change, as governments every 5 years are set to revisit their earlier commitments.
The summit will present practical and new measures to, 1, speed up the transition from coal to clean energy and to cut the pollution that is harming our health, create cleaner, greener ways to work and to move, speed up the transition in key sectors from grey to green economies, safeguard people from the impacts of climate change already being felt right now.
Taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impact on society is one of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals set for the year 2030. Oh Si-young, Arirang News.
Now, if the flood of pre-orders for Samsung's Galaxy Fold is anything to go by, this next iteration of the smartphone, the foldable phone, is likely to be the next big thing. The competition among the usual players to stamp their presence on the market early is red hot. There's also this aspect of exclusivity, as these foldable devices are likely to be in short supply for some time to come. Lee Kyung-eun tells us more.
It took only 15 minutes for the first pre-order of the Galaxy Fold to completely sell out. Thousands of units were immediately bought on Samsung's official website on Wednesday, as well as during the second pre-order on Friday. The situation was no different for local mobile carriers and electronic retail shops. The premium gadget is priced as high as 2,400,000 Korean won or $2,000, but that high price tag isn't putting off those looking to be the first to get their hands on the Galaxy Fold. More than 20,000 units have been sold already, and some people are even willing to pay as much as $4,000 to buy the phone off resellers. But it's not just the high demand that is causing the phone to sell out. Industry experts are pointing to undersupply as the main cause, while giving varying explanations for the supply shortage. Some claim Samsung is artificially holding back the supply for marketing purposes, The high price and limited stocks make customers who do get their hands on the phone feel special. Others say that with Japan's export curves on high-tech materials, Samsung could be struggling to secure related components, namely polyamide, as Japan's Sumitomo Chemical has monopolized production of the component. Samsung has previously denied such concerns. There's also technical issues to consider. The Galaxy Fold is the world's first foldable smartphone and already saw its launch delayed due to technical defects in April. As a result, it requires a longer manufacturing process and stricter inspections, especially at such early stage of its release. With no details known about the next pre-order, there is still excitement among those consumers who are eager to be one of the first in the world to own the Galaxy Fold. Lee Young-eun, Arirang News.
In sports, the LA Dodgers' South Korean pitcher Ryu Hyunjin has hit his first career home run in Major League Baseball. Against the Colorado Rockies on Sunday at Dodger Stadium, Ryu sent a fastball over the fence in right center field. Leading off the bottom in the fifth inning, Ryu's solo homer tied Sunday's game at 1 apiece. It was his 210th career at-bat since joining the big league in 2013. The Dodgers went on to win 7-4, giving Ryu his 13th win of the season. Now, things have gotten a touch better, but tensions between the United States and Iran are still bubbling away. Washington continues to insist Iran did sponsor the recent missile and drone attacks on Saudi Arabian oil facilities. But the US is now saying it doesn't want a war. Those comments coming in particular from US President Donald Trump. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So Dami, give us the latest on what's still a rather fluid situation.
Mark, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says his country's mission is to avoid war with Tehran. But the U.S. has ordered additional troops to act as a deterrent to Iran and slapped even more sanctions on the regime. Speaking to Fox News on Sunday, Pompeo noted that President Trump would take much stronger action if deterrence measures failed, which was well understood by the Iranian leadership. Pompeo then reiterated that there's plenty of evidence to show Iran was behind the attacks, calling constant Iranian denials a lie. Despite all the accusations, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said he's confident there'll be no war, but whoever starts one will be the one who finishes it. However, Washington is still expressing a willingness to solve the crisis diplomatically. President Trump left the door open to possibly talking with his Iranian counterparts. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Sunday, Trump said he has no intention of meeting with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani during the UN General Assembly this week, but noted how you can never say never and that he's a flexible person. U.S. President Donald Trump has acknowledged he discussed former Vice President Joe Biden in a July call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as Democrats press for an investigation into Trump's contact with the foreign leader. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Trump said the call did take place, but the conversation was largely congratulatory despite mentioning the corruption allegations facing Biden and one of his sons. The controversy comes as CNN reported that Trump pressed Zelensky in the call to investigate the former vice president and his son Hunter. The call was part of a reported whistleblower complaint submitted to the U.S. Inspector General. For the first time in almost 40 years, Iranian women will be able to attend a World Cup qualifier in Tehran next month. FIFA President Gianni Infantino made the announcement on Sunday, adding it's important to move to the next level and to the next stage. FIFA said it will be working with the Iranian Football Federation to develop plans for women to attend domestic matches in the Iranian League. The Islamic Republic has banned female fans from stadiums since 1981 under the country's strict Islamic laws and customs. FIFA had demanded Iran allow women to stadiums following news that a female Iranian set herself on fire to protest against her arrest for attending a game.
Now, we are going to start our Life and Info segment today with news of another suspected case of African swine fever, reported this morning at a farm in the city of Gimpo, just outside of Seoul. This is in addition to 2 cases detected last week, not that far from the South Korean capital. The Agriculture Ministry says it's now inspecting the farm. It also says it will ramp up its efforts to disinfect those areas after Typhoon Tapah passed through over the weekend, likely washing away disinfectants that had already been applied. The ministry will be working with other state agencies and local farmers and will be using military vehicles to administer the chemicals. African swine fever does not affect humans, but it's fatal to pigs and can be dormant for up to 19 days. So the next 3 weeks will be crucial to stop its spread. On a related note, pork prices seem to be going back down after a temporary spike last week because of the initial outbreak of African swine fever. The Agriculture Ministry said as of last Friday, pork prices had fallen some 14% from the previous day. A kilogram wholesale was selling for around 5,000 won, that's about $4. It had gone up to 6,200 won when the authorities banned all vehicles from moving in and out of pig farms nationwide. But more pork has since been released, except from the areas directly affected by African swine fever. Botox is most often associated with cosmetic treatments and is especially popular in South Korea as a way to keep your face looking fresh beyond its years. But growing evidence shows Botox also has some medical benefits that remain rather underutilized, at least for now. Park Se-young with more.
Botox, or botulinum toxin, is a toxin produced by the bacteria Clostridium botulinum. A single gram of the toxin can kill as many as 1 million people, but it's called a miracle drug as it also comes with both cosmetic and medical benefits. And the medicine industry has been eyeing the growing body of evidence that shows Botox can treat an increasing number of conditions. In fact, the annual global Botox market is expected to reach $5.9 billion by 2021. This is why a U.S. drug maker spent $63 billion to acquire Botox maker Allergan.
It's known that botulinum toxin treats illnesses or helps overcome bad conditions in a sizable number of fields. The uses of the toxin are expanding to that of a cure-all.
Currently, medical treatment and cosmetic purposes each make up about half of the global Botox market. In the newer markets of South Korea and China, medical purposes make up only 10% of Botox use. However, with Botox being regarded as a golden egg in Korea, the industry is overheating with development.
About 10 local companies have already developed or have announced plans to develop Botox medicines, so it seems to be overheating.
With findings of the hidden effects of Botox, the pharmaceutical industry expects the market to see huge growth. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Good morning. Typhoon Tapah that drenched Korea's eastern and southern regions has moved out, and the weakening weather system is currently passing south of Korea's easternmost islets of Dokdo and Ulleungdo. And today is Chubun, the 16th of 24 solar terms throughout the year, and it falls in mid-autumn. It was a chilly, stormy day yesterday, and most regions saw highs in the teens. But today's highs will jump 4 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday, but southern regions will see highs drop below the seasonal norms. So daily highs will be ranging from 23 to 25 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and showers in the East Coast will finally move away, and we will be under bright autumn skies this afternoon. And the rest of the week is forecast to be warmer than the seasonal norms under fairly sunny skies, while southern regions will see showers on Friday, which could linger into Saturday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to leave the news and weather for now on this Monday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to Arirang TV, and a reminder that our next newscast is coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.